makes me feel more comfortable and relaxed. I do see some of our county employees and at least one commissioner, so I got to sort of behave myself. But anyway, we'll still have fun. I'll be more relaxed than serious. I love being. First time I've ever been mistaken for Bill Jakes, but he has way more money than me, so I do kind of feel good this morning.
I really do. I will send you all the search results.
That's okay. That's okay. You're off the hook. That's okay.
I'm trying to get you to change it as soon as possible. And that's not a formatting error.
I actually tried to get out of this talk. Not that I didn't want to come hang out with you all and eat a wonderful meal, but Gibbs like, come talk about the archives. And I was like, do you want them to fall asleep after lunch? Because I love my job and we love the county archives and we do an important part of county government. And I have talked about that before, but I lose most people after a sentence or two. And so I got off the hook and I threw our new resident librarian, Kayla Willoughby, she just got married, under the bus, and she's going to come talk to you in a few weeks or days or something, one of your upcoming meetings. And then he hooked me back, well, you can come talk about the museum, because we haven't heard about that. So that's what we're going to do today. Not so much archives and all about the museum. So am I moving slides? Are you moving slides? That's a young me, so still feeling good. Yeah, so I'm rich and young still.
Let me get your presentation going.
Okay.
Get your picture changed.
Thank you. I had hair and it was brown a couple years ago.
I did find some other photos of Kayla, so
There you go.
That's the cover of the
There we go. So I've been in the community since mid-90s, 94, from Nashville originally, so right up the street. But, I've called Murfreesboro home for, 3 decades now, I guess. And so I've been around long enough to know kind of our history of the history of Rutherford County and Murfreesboro, and the fact that our historical society, which we have a great county historical society, one of the best in the state, I will claim. They told you I was going to move. They have been around since the early 70s. A lot of folks involved over the decades for our county historical society, and they always wanted a county museum. Now, sure, we have Oakland, Sam Davis home, we have Cannonsburg since the late 1970s, but we never had a true county museum, something the county could literally own, but more operate for the benefit of our citizens, to work with the historical societies, to work with the DAR groups or whatever historical-minded groups in our community, because we have several. But a central focal point, a central base to exhibit our history and show it off and educate the children, right? And so finally, Bill Ketron, who many of you know, hello, Dr. Bonner, how we doing? Now I'm nervous. My teacher's in the house. So Bill Ketron, wasn't his original idea by any means, but Bill Ketron happened to be the right time, the right place, the old saying. And, former state senator, came county mayor, and during that 4-year term, he's like, we're going to build a county museum. Now, a lot of things were happening with county government. We opened the new judicial building. I wasn't going to talk about the archives. We opened a new judicial building, and some offices were moving around, and all of a sudden we saw a golden opportunity to put a museum into the historic courthouse. How appropriate, right? So now, 4 years ago, this past November, we officially opened the Rutherford County Historic Courthouse Museum in the first floor of the historic courthouse. Now, I'm going to put y'all on the spot. Don't look around. But how many of you have been to the museum? Okay, good. More than I thought. This is really, really good, because I'll be honest, we don't advertise it well enough. We're working on that. But it's been open 4 years. I'm glad people are finding it. The funny part is most people find it when they have to go pay their property taxes in the courthouse. And they look across the hall and like, oh, what's that old stuff? And they go check it out. But however you find it, we don't mind how you find it, as long as you do find it. So let's go ahead and go to the slides, or the next slide. Or am I controlling this?
Yes.
Okay, that means I have the power. Let's see. I don't know where I'm pointing at. There we go. Okay. So I was going to give you all, please go to the museum. Please visit. The museum covers a very wide swath of our history, from early Native Americans to Nissan is the way we call it. If you say that fast enough, it sounds catchy. Native Americans and Nissan. And so our earliest histories collectively all the way up to around 1980s or so, when Nissan factory went into Smyrna and changed the landscape of the northern part of the county. And we had to cut off our timeline somewhere, so we picked Nissan since it was so influential part of our history. And so there was a lot that went into the county museum. And like I said, go visit the museum. You'll see the wonderful artifacts, the exhibits. But I want to talk a little more about behind the scenes. How did we form a museum for this county after decades of wanting one? How did we finally kind of make it happen? And there was a couple key things that fell into place. One is Mayor Ketron saying we're going to do this. Full support of the county commissioners who said, yeah, it sounds like a great idea, let's do this. Obviously support of the community who agreed. And then Mayor Ketron was smart enough, of course he was smart, but smart enough to contact Dr. Carol Van West at the Center for Historic Preservation at MTSU. Dr. West, one of my professors twice with both degrees, so definitely in a long time ago in recent years, has been director of the Center for Historic Preservation for over 40 years, and he's actually retiring in a few months. And so Dr. West is our center director. He's a history professor at MTSU for 40 plus years, and most importantly, state historian for the past decade plus. So of all people that we had right here in our backyard to build a very nice looking museum, he reached out to Dr. West. And then West put a small team together. I was brought in as director of the archives. We had several of his staff people and our graduate students because it is a learning tool for MTSU, especially the history department, obviously. We were able to work together. It took us several years, 2 or 3 years, to really get the nuts and bolts together. We did some preliminary work, but all said and done, when we opened in November of 2021, the Sunday, we had a groundbreaking right before Thanksgiving of that year. We were able to bring it all together. And there's some fun stories that went into that. One of the funnest stories is our budget was like $0. So we had a small budget. That's not, Lisa Nolan is our former budget director, and she's like, that's not totally true. That's not totally true. We had several, I won't say how much, but we had thousands of dollars to go into the bricks and mortar of the project. So we had to replace floors and ceilings and lightings and carpet and all that. So we did put some money into it, Lisa. But when it came down to the artifacts and the museum galleries, there wasn't much money left. So some great things where we were able to reach out to the State Museum. They had just moved into a new museum in Nashville, and we were able to get some cases for relatively cheap and refurbish them. We have a great county maintenance department, and those guys jumped in, and they literally moved a few walls for us, not joking, for nothing, and helped us flush out some cases and things like that. So what is actually in the museum? We're still working on this, but we're always looking for artifacts that tell a story. What is our collective history of Rutherford County? What's that one artifact that tells a story? And I threw this together 30 minutes ago. Not very professional today, but I just wanted to give you some representation of...
Clearly me either, so.
We're both doing great, right? So I just threw some representative slides of kind of what you're going to find at the museum. Not all the best pictures, some decent pictures, but we're looking for those artifacts that tell a story. And I have several stories along those lines. But for example, you know, we're in Murfreesboro in Tennessee. You can't say anything about history without talking about the Civil War, right? And so what few artifacts could we put in the museum to tell this huge story? And of course we have Stones River Battlefield up the street with their museum, so they're going to tell the entire story. We just needed a couple stories. And I don't have a picture of it. We do have a Civil War case. I call it the gun case because it has rifles in it. But you can't see it. We can't see it, unfortunately. Right here, there's a little display of a Civil War bullet. So you can get on eBay, you can get on a lot of online sites, and you can buy Civil War bullets all day long. You know, almost literally a dime a dozen, maybe a little more than a dime this day and age. But it's like, but what's that going to tell? That doesn't tell me a story. Well, we have the bullet on display that was found at the top of the courthouse around 2002. This is a true story. So around 2002, they were refurbishing part of the outside of the courthouse, and they were painting the columns. And they had to get up to the top where the capitals are, and they had to replace the netting to keep the pigeons out. A lot of people don't know that story, but you have to keep the pigeons out, and so you put a little netting. And one of the construction guys was up at the top, and he happened to look up into the top of it. And there's a little bit of a platform in there, and there was a Civil War bullet up in there. So he pulled it out, and he gave it to Ben Mankin, our former maintenance director, who then turned around and gave it to me, my early years at the county. He said, hey, John, you're not going to believe this. They found a Civil War bullet in the Capitol of that column the other day. Check this out. So I was like, well, that's kind of neat, but I do African-American history way more than Civil War history, so I'm not a Civil War buff. And so I took it to the battlefield. Gib was there, and Jim Lewis, who's like a walking, talking encyclopedia of Civil War history, right? And I showed him that bullet. He goes, oh, that's a unique bullet. And I said, looks like a Civil War bullet. And he goes, no. that belongs to a very specific rifle, a Lorenz rifle. And I was like, okay, I wanted to say so what, or what does that mean? But that wasn't very professional, so I said, what does that mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Well, the caliber of the bullet was unique to one rifle that was used by the Union Army and then later the Confederate Army. Back me up if I don't have my history right. I think I have it right. And so that Union rifle that bullet must have come from had been given to the Union Army right in Murfreesboro right before the forced raid down East Main Street. The bullet was also found very specifically on the west side of the courthouse. So we will never know the full story of how that bullet ended up there. But we can surmise that we believe it probably ended up there during the raid on the courthouse by General Forrest. As he came down East Main Street, the Union Army that was in the courthouse fled down West Main Street, got 2-3 blocks away, and were firing back towards the courthouse. And for this bullet to travel some small distance, hit the top of the roof and landed that Capitol, because it had a little deformed slightly, but not a lot. And that was Jim Lewis' summation, is probably what happened. Or the Union soldiers that were after the Battle of Stones River hung out here for 2 more years. Maybe it was a drinking game one Friday night. I don't know. I like my first story. I don't like the second synopsis at all. But that's a bullet that tells a very, very specific story. And we have several things. Most of the artifacts on display at the museum have been given to us or loaned to us, and we were able to get that rifle, or one of those, there's a lot of them, but one of those rifles on loan from the battlefield. And it's at the museum today. All of our artwork, our portraits, our paintings are very unique. I love this story. I told you I talk too much, and I'm getting very long-winded on short time frame here. Okay. These portraits here were given to us after the museum opened. And the one in the middle is a young lady at the time of the painting, and she was a Lodl descendant. So if you've been here long enough and happen to know your Murfreesboro history, the town square itself was named after Colonel Hardy Murphy, right? Murfreesboro's namesake. But the land was given by his buddy and Revolutionary War veteran, William Lodl. And so the woman in the middle is Lodl's daughter, who married Foster on the left, who was a very important statesman out of Nashville, but not a Murfreesboro native. So we don't highlight his story as much as we highlight hers. But the story I like the most, does this have a pointer?
Yeah.
Ooh, look at that. I am high tech today. I don't even do social media, y'all, so this is very fancy for me. So this guy's name is Washington Cooper, and he's actually the painter of these 2 paintings and the other ones you can't see around the corner. So we have about 6 paintings in the museum, and he painted, I believe, all of them. And Washington Cooper is important because he was born in he was born in this area. He learned to be a painter in Murfreesboro like in the 1820s. As the square is being founded and built, he's learning how to paint by we don't know who. But he said later on in his later years that he learned to paint in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He goes off to Paris to be trained by the professionals and then comes back into Tennessee, 1830s, 40s, 50s, and he's known for painting a lot of our state's people. So basically the George Washingtons of Tennessee. So he would have painted Andrew Jackson, he would have painted James K. Polk, a lot of those early influential Tennesseans. He did paint women as well as men. Obviously he's getting paid to do this, so if they're influential, he's going to be asked to paint them. But this is his self-portrait, and we just got this out of Florida about 2 years ago. We don't know how exactly it happened, but it got out of his hands into this family and stayed in that family till 2 years ago. So it'd been with this family for, I don't know, almost 200 years, definitely 175. And the woman who's possessed it was part of the DAR chapter down there, and she said that belongs in Murfreesboro because he was from Murfreesboro and such importance to our history. So she gave it back to us, and we were able to acquire it from Florida with the help of the local DAR chapters. But it's funny, it's a self-portrait. The oral history that came with that is that this gentleman was actually a little more, I'm going to bear with me, I'm going to use the word plump today. He was a little plumper than is represented in that portrait. So before we had Photoshop and selfies, he painted himself thinner and better looking than he actually really was. I was like, that's a pretty smart guy, you know? So, pre-Photoshop. So like I said, we want those artifacts that tell a story. Oops, what am I doing? Not that. As we progress through the rooms, like I said, every room kind of covers a different era. That first room is our early history. I need to stop and give a shout out to Dr. Tolbert. Some of y'all know Dr. Tolbert in our community, and the museum would not have happened as well as it did without his very generous donation. He and his family, his wife, gave early period furniture, which I don't have pictures of. That first room, there's about a dozen early pieces of Tennessee furniture that were made in Rutherford County by early white settlers, by black craft people as well. So that first room is very, very rich with our history in terms of what we call material culture, as I learned from Dr. West over the past 5 years. But material culture, how we created things and what our skills were in this community. As you get into the second room, we'll get away from the war and we'll kind of get into the early 1900s, but we cover very briefly the Revolutionary period where photography becomes on the realm. Cameras had been developed really into their prime during the Civil War, and these three pictures right here just came into our possession. I think I have a close-up of them. There we go. These are three pictures of African-American gentlemen came into our possession about a year ago, and I was so happy to get my hands on them. Oh, great. What these are, they're called charcoal on photograph. So as the Civil War progressed, and then thereafter for the next 2 decades, camera development, the invention of the camera and the development of how to develop film really takes off and really becomes marketable. And photographers can make a living all of a sudden just taking pictures if they travel around enough. So traveling photographers would come into town, be it here or Woodbury or Lebanon, pick your town, set up shop for a brief period of time, take photographs and sell them. But they made more money if they printed the picture big and then literally charcoaled on top of them to add depth to the image, to add color, because images are black and white, right? To add color and bring the picture really back to life. And so they would make a lot more money doing that. Now, charcoal and photographs aren't that rare. They're a little rare, but they aren't that rare. If you get on eBay or any of the online places, museum websites, things like that, you'll see them. But to have African Americans, not too stereotyped, to have African Americans in this region in the around 1900 meant that, unfortunately, we don't know exactly who these gentlemen are. I do have their names. That's about all I have. We don't have a lot of history on who they were. But they must have been influential. We know they came out of the Walter Hill area, but they must have been influential enough to have a father and his 2 sons photographed, and then beyond photographed and captured for the literal history books, right? These were donated by the family about a year ago because they wanted this story told, preserved, and shared with our community. So that's a great way of us gathering artifacts. We have one room that has murals of the square. So if you are from Murfreesboro or been here for a long time, it's a great way to literally step back in time. You can go into this third room and there's murals on the walls, photographs that we blew up into murals on the walls of different eras on the square. And it's fun. If you're in that room, we oriented it so the historic images are north, south, east, and west. To the point that if you are on this side, that's facing East Main Street. If you look out that window, you can see East Main Street going towards MTSU, and these pictures on both sides are looking at that direction. So you can kind of look at the historic picture, look out the window, and kind of see how things have changed over time. So we have a lot of fun.
Did you get those from Shacklets?
A lot of these came from Shacklets. We do house the Shacklet Historic Photograph Collection at the Rutherford County Archives. So a lot of these did come from Shacklets. I've run out of time to really talk about some of the neat little artifacts we have. But there's, like I said, we try to weave a lot of stories in a very small space as you go through the museum. It's a lot of fun. I think I'll finish, I don't know what story to finish with. There's so many.
We're good on time if you want to finish with 2.
I can finish with 2. Oh, you gave me too much authority if you let me finish with 2. This is a fun story. So this case right here represents the integration of our schools. And so, and I have many of you in the audience that know the story better than I do. But, with my background, I was director of the Bradley Academy Museum when I came out of grad school 25 years ago, around 2003 or 2004. Just for a brief time, it was when Bradley Academy Museum, if you haven't been to that museum, please visit. Right down at the south side of Academy Street, South Academy. And it's the old 1917, 1918 African-American school building in Murfreesboro. The one African-American school building in Murfreesboro. And so being at Bradley Academy, I learned a lot about the history of our African-American community, especially decades prior. Then later, being director of the archives, I learned a lot of other histories collectively, especially the history of Central High School, which was the white high school in town. And so at Bradley, we told a lot about Holloway High School, the African-American high school. I knew a lot about Central, the white high school. And when the two integrated, 1968, Dr. Bonner, 1969, right? 68, the two schools came together. And the way that worked was they took the students out of Holloway and many of the teachers and principal, and they put them into Central High School. And that's how they integrated the high schools here in Murfreesboro. But both teams had outstanding football teams. But to my knowledge, and you locals correct me if I'm wrong, they never won a state championship. I don't think ever is the story I had heard. Never won a state football championship individually. But in 1970, after the integration of the schools, those players working together won the state championship for the first time. And so who won the state championship this year? High school football? Oakland. And I was watching the news recently about that because now my son goes to Smyrna, so I had to be careful with, watching my Oakland's football. But when they went to the state, I was reading some article about it in one of the local papers, and it says the first time they had won since the game of 1970 or something like that. I forgot, or maybe they were referencing the first game of 1970 being the first state championship. But this ball was on loan from Bill Ketron. He was on that winning team. And when the game was over, all the guys signed the football, and somehow Bill ended up with it, and I forgot how he ended up with it out of let's leave that alone. But anyway, Bill ended up with it, and he's gracious to loan it to us. But we love telling the story of Holloway High School, Central High School, and the coming together. So, like I said, we're still looking for artifacts. If you know of anybody that has artifacts, they're willing to either loan for a year, 2 year, 3 years loan agreement, or to donate to the county. So that's the way it is through the county. Then I am all ears. We're still looking for things. There's all our contact information, business cards as well. So please visit the museum. The museum is open when the courthouse is open. So right now that is Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, 8 to 4:30. So you can. It's free of charge. You can just walk in and it's self-guided tours. Walk through the museum, enjoy it. We do give tours from time to time with small groups. We can only handle about 20 people max, maybe 25 because the rooms aren't real big. So we do have a website. You can just Google Rutherford County Museum and find it. You can also go through the county archives website or even the county government website and find the museum page, and you can actually book a tour. And usually I do those. And don't worry, I'm less winded when I'm up there because we have less time. And so we'll get you through the museum. It takes about an hour on a guided tour. But anyway, if you have a small group that wants to do a museum tour, let us know. You can reach out through the website. Otherwise, please visit the museum. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Just a comment. I'm new to Murfreesboro, having been here 1 year and 11 days now.
All right. I like the fact that you're keeping count.
So my wife and I went to the museum about 8-10 months ago, and to compliment the docent, the security guard, he was fantastic. He told us everything we needed to see, where to go, what to do.
That's great.
And if he's not a docent, he should be.
So that's Al, our security guard. And when Mayor Ketron came into office, we didn't have any daytime security in the courthouse. And so it was advisable by the county commissioners we should probably have some security, not just for the museum, but just for the employees and the safety of the citizens in the square and all the things. And so we hired a security officer, but it's actually not one of our off-duty sheriff department, which you would have guessed maybe could have done that role also easily. but we hired third-party contract security. And these guys rotate out every 6 months to a year or so. And in the past year, we got Al. And Al was born and raised in Smyrna. He's gone, traveled the world, and he's done amazing things. He has military and he has a lot of backgrounds, man of many talents. And lo and behold, he lands as our security officer of all things at the courthouse. And he and I have been talking over the past year, as well as anybody that's been at the courthouse or works at the courthouse. And come to find out he's from Smyrna. He's an avid history buff. He loves it. He's a sponge. Like, you tell him a story and he won't forget it in terms of history of the museum. And so now he's like our ad hoc tour guide. You don't need me. You need Al. So maybe I need to start booking the tours with him. I think people would pay more. It's free, by the way. But anyway, so thank you for putting a shout out for Al. When I leave here, I'll go by and tell him that you put a shout out for him. Yes.
Well, two things. I had worked with Al a couple of times. And
Okay, good. Yes.
Are we doing, or is it anything in there about trying to get some oral history of Murfreesboro before it completely disappears?
That's a great question. Through the archives and through the museum itself, and of course, like the staff of the museum is like me. Actively no, but the Albert Gore Research Center, MTSU, which is the University Archives, has done oral history since their inception in 1985. So sometimes if we have a community person or member that we know we need to have an oral interview with, we'll reach out to the Gore Center, and sometimes they'll send somebody out to do oral interviews. It's real, honestly, case by case, who it is and what's the priority and can we get this done. I have done a few over the years. I had the honor and privilege of interviewing Dr. Bonner, her mother, before your mother passed at the archive. And that was years ago, and that was a great, great, great interview. So yes and no. If you have somebody in mind, you can definitely reach out and we can try to figure that out.
One of the highlights of my high school years was being a member of the band, the marching band, the symphony band. So on that cover is a unique clarinet that I inherited from my cousin.
Oh.
It was a wooden clarinet. Mr. James Hall was the band director.
Okay.
And we, on the first side, we had the marching band, which featured songs like Keep On Pushing by the Impressions, Moon River, and then on the flip side was the symphony, Porgy and Bess. So,
So you're on that recording.
Oh yeah, it was just a highlight. High school was so fun, and I was an office worker, so I got to go through everybody's records.
I wondered how you knew so much about people.
Oh yes.
That's the fun part about the museum is, people come through and tell me stories, because I'm over 50, y'all, but I'm still young, I guess. So they tell me stories because I'm too young to remember, or I wasn't here yet, and all those things. So that's what I enjoy about it.
Lori,
So I had never heard that story before.
Where'd y'all play football?
We played at Holloway High, which is now Patterson Park.
Okay.
So the parking lot was the football field.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it was just amazing because outstanding athletes like Willem Rudolph competed there with against Holloway, but we just had phenomenal athletes.
Just other questions? Thank you, John.
All right, thank you so much. I
Yeah,
appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Will you be here for a little while afterwards? All right, awesome. Any minute. While I'm waiting for that to come up, I did want to remind everyone, of course, every year we have our first snowpocalypse prediction, which has come later this year. So the prediction last time I saw was 8 to 12 inches Saturday night going into Sunday, and more snow on Sunday. So probably that means we will not get 8 to 12 inches, but remember that we follow the Rutherford County schools. So if on Tuesday there is no school on Tuesday, we will also not meet. If there's no school on Monday, but the kids are back on Tuesday, we will be here. So, but I'll send an email as well if that ends up happening, but a good